This episode is sponsored by Learn Light and Sound. We have courses on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Check out the link down below. In this episode, we're going to talk about building a sound bag. So for those that haven't used a sound bag before, this is hopefully going to be instructive to you, and we'll learn some lessons along the way here. I built out a few, but this is a new one for me. And just in full disclosure, I purchased some of this equipment, but some of it was sent to me by DEITY. So I purchased the recorder, the Zoom F8n Pro, as well as the DEITY Theos wireless microphone system in the bag. The rest of it came from DEITY. That includes power distribution, radio frequency distribution, antennas, and a battery down here. All right, so when you are working as a dedicated sound person for a video production, there are some things that you have to deliver. Now, obviously, you have to deliver quality sound. So quality sound recordings that the post-production team can use, or that if you're going to be post-production that you can use. And to do that, there are a few considerations and things that are a little bit tricky when you're on set. Things move fast, and they need to move fast because time is money when you're on set. If you have a crew that you're paying, all of those crew members, you have to pay them money, plus you pay your actors or talent money, plus there's the equipment rentals or whatever else. There's just a lot of money that's being spent to produce a video. And when you're operating sound, the reason they're hiring you to do that is so that you can focus on it and you can deliver it without creating delays in the production process. And of course, to deliver really great sound as well. So part of that is that you have to be able to be in a position where your equipment isn't slowing you down. So for example, if you are recording, let's say for example, we had two different wireless receivers, wireless microphone receivers, plus we had this recorder, plus I had my phone, which I was using to remotely manage the transmitters, change the settings, whatever. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 different devices that need power of some sort. And if I'm powering them each with their own batteries, say, for example, I had some batteries in here. You'll notice I don't, and we'll talk about why in just a second. But if I had batteries here, I had a second receiver with batteries. I had this thing with its own batteries. Obviously, my phone has its own battery. There's a lot to manage there, and there's a lot to keep track of. So one thing you can do to solve that problem is to use something like the Spd-mini. That's this little device right here from DEITY. This is a power distribution box, and the way this works is it has 2 power inputs on the back, so you can feed the power from a battery, a smart battery in this case, into the back of this, and then you can output power to all of the devices in your bag, and you'll notice there's a USB-C port here, so I could also power my phone. And that way, you have a screen here that gives you your overall battery status and gives you the ability to swap out the battery once for all of your devices. In addition to that, this has 2 inputs on the back. So it has one where I can connect the smart battery, and it also has a USB PD input. So I can also connect a USB battery bank that supplies PD power. And that gives me essentially a bridge as well. So what I mean by a bridge is if I do have to change out that smart battery, the USB battery bank will power everything while I'm swapping out that other battery. So I don't have to power everything down. And that's huge because powering things down can be actually pretty time consuming, especially, for example, if you have to reset the time code for your mixer. Now, most mixers that do full time code aren't going to have that issue, but some of them do get a little bit weird when you power down and you power back up, and then you might have to rejam the time code, and that takes more time. So you don't want the whole production having to wait for all that. That's the beauty of a power distribution system. So in addition to that, we also have here an RF distribution system. This is the SRD-Mini from DEITY. And this is kind of a unique combination here. So you'll notice here we have these 2 antennas here. These are called butterfly antennas. These are the DEITY BF-1s. They're attached to my bag with these friction clamps, and I can reorient them in any way. And right now I have them down like this just so that you can see them. But the idea with these antennae are that I can get something that sits up a little bit higher than most typical whip antennas would and can potentially give me better reception. They're also spaced a little farther apart than whip antennas. So that also gives you a little bit more stability potentially. And you could also put these on a bar and put them up on a stand to get them up even higher, because we all know that for radio frequency reception, having things within line of sight is an improvement. That's a better situation to be in. And so that's part of what these antennas provide us. Now, if I just had this one receiver, I didn't I don't technically need an RF distribution box. I could just connect the outputs of these antennas directly into the two antenna inputs on the receiver. But as soon as I add a second receiver to my kit, I don't want to have to buy two more of these antennas and also find a place to mount them. Instead, we can share them because our two different receivers are operating, well, each of the channels on our receivers are operating at different frequencies, and these antennas can capture radio frequency from 470 megahertz all the way up to 1 gigahertz. So what that means is I can actually share these antennas amongst up to 4 different receivers. And then each of these receivers here, this is the DEITY Theos, each of these can receive 2 channels of wireless microphone data. So I can connect 2 transmitters to this. So I can get up to 8 channels or 8 transmitters of wireless audio sharing 2 antennas just like this. And that's what this RF distribution does. In addition to that, you'll notice it's connected directly to the power distribution box. This is pretty cool. It's a docking feature, essentially. So I don't have to run another cable from the power distribution box to the RF distribution box. They actually have these pins here that just mate, and the power is sent directly from the box to the RF distribution box. This RF distribution box, the SRD-Mini, obviously is powered, so it has an amplifier in it. In addition to that, it can send power to antennas that require power. These are actually passive antennas and they don't require power, so I have it turned off right now, but this could supply that as well. And it uses industry standard connectors, so here it's using SMA connectors. And what I do is I connect these antennas to the back of the SRD-Mini, and then I have all these ports on the side that I can run to each of the receivers that I'm using, up to, again, 4 different receivers. Now, this is just the initial setup. Lots of problems can happen in a little tiny setup like this, so I'm going to test it over the next several weeks. But the main concerns I have is, okay, I'm running a lot of different cables through here. They're power cables, and anytime you run power through cables, anytime there's current flowing through a cable, that creates an electromagnetic field, which could potentially impact radio frequency cables. So cables that are running radio frequency from the antennas to the distribution box and from the distribution box out to the receivers. Do we get any sort of interference that's picked up there? We'll do some testing on that. Also, I'm running, of course, the outputs from the receiver into the mixer. So there's some more cables. Those are these yellow cables back here that run down into the bag and then over here into the mixer. So are we picking up interference there as well? So that's why you'll see in pro bags like this a power distribution box and a radio frequency distribution if you've got these external antennas that you're running to your receivers. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll answer what I can. And then in a few weeks after I've tested it out for a little while, I'll pin a comment here and let you know how things went, if I got any interference issues or anything like that. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. You can also, the DEITY Theos is actually powered via USB-C. You can actually output from all of the ports here to different formats, to different types of inputs on different recording equipment. So on the Zoom F8n Pro, it has a 4-pin Hiroshi input for power. So I can run a 4-pin Hiroshi from here to the F8n Pro. That powers that. We could actually use these USB-C ports to power my phone or to charge my phone if I needed to do that. But I can also use it on these receivers, which are powered via USB-C, up to 3 of them. Now, a word of warning, this is not going to provide enough current to power things like a sound device's MixPre 3 or MixPre 6. Those are actually fairly power-hungry devices. So in those cases, if you wanted to use this particular power distribution box, what you'd probably want to do is get the battery sled for the MixPre 3 or 6 that has the 4-pin Hiroshi input. So essentially you're saying, hey, instead of taking this battery sled allows me to input a Hiroshi 4-pin input from a power distribution box or directly from a smart battery. Another thing I forgot to mention earlier, this power distribution box also shows you something. So it works with smart batteries, and the telemetry, the data from the smart batteries is sent over into this. And this has 4 different output ports, or 5 different output ports, so you can power up to 5 different devices. Or if you're using a breakout cable like this, there's a 1 4-pin Hiroshi to 3 USB-Cs to power your wireless receivers. You can do that as well. But it also sends this data, and this data includes, of course, the battery remaining percentage. It gives us an estimate of how much more time we have with the current power consumption. So here, for example, I'm just recording 1 microphone, plus I've got a receiver right now, and I've got about 9 more hours. I'm at 58%, and I've got about 9 more hours I can power things here with this particular battery. As I mentioned, there's a USB-C input here, so not only could I use a USB battery bank, I could also use a USB power adapter. So here, for example, is one that supplies power delivery 3.1, which can give up to 140 watts. So I could plug this in as well. So if I'm using my bag and I happen to be in a spot where I've got AC power, access to AC power, I could plug in for that period of the production and not have to wear down the batteries at all. Just go straight to AC, or have a battery and AC plugged in, and that way, if the power goes out, I'm still powered for whatever reason. So lots of cool features here. Oh, there's also one other thing here, this little one down here. That shows you the number of recharge cycles the batteries have. So that gives you kind of a sense for the long-term health of the battery. We know that we've only done one recharge cycle on this so far, so we've got a lot more life left. We should easily get at least 1,500 charge cycles out of that battery. So that's a look at the overall sound bag. Again, I'll pin a comment later on over a few weeks after I've tested this out a little bit more just to see and confirm that I'm not having any issues, or if I do run into issues, what I had to do to solve them. Go ahead and leave me any questions down below. In the meantime, get out there, make some great sound, and we'll talk to you again soon.